Hello my friends and welcome back to the channel. Now I want to make a quick video to talk about what's been happening in the political world of Eastern Ukraine, because over the course of Thursday there's been a few developments that I think are really interesting and I want to share those with you. So let's just jump straight back into it because there is a lot to cover today. So let's start as we usually do with a BBC article. Ukraine conflict. Moscow could defend Russia-backed rebels. A top Russian official has warned that Moscow could intervene to help its citizens in eastern Ukraine as tensions rise in the region. Now, this is based on comments that have been made by Dmitry Kozak, and he's Moscow's chief negotiator with Kyiv. So he's the person that's really got the ultimate say aside from Putin about what's happening, and he's made some comments today in a press conference in relation to questions about the build-up of Russian forces on the Ukrainian border. So talking about the military action that could be happening there or the assessment, he said if military action was to begin, this would be the beginning of the end for Ukraine. And that actually makes a very stark contrast to what's been happening in terms of Russia's language before. Now, we know Russia has been hostile to Ukraine for many years, but their language has always been, it's nothing to do with us, and it's never been as aggressive as this. So the fact that they're starting to be less subtle is a bit of a worrying sign. And he's talking about the ability of Russian troops stepping in, and has even referenced the war in Bosnia from 1992 and saying we will have to step in to defend them, which again is very aggressive. It's showing that Russia actually has these plans. Before, they've always made out they've got nothing to do with it, that they're not involved, that them and the rebels are two separate things. But the fact that they're willing to go to such lengths is a massive change. And I've actually found this very interesting article on The Independent because of it. It's hard to know what Russia is up to. If you saw my last video, you would just know that I said it was more of a bluff, it was a bit of a tactic, and it seems that we're now wondering if that could be bluffing or for real. Russia's military build-up on the Ukrainian border raises questions on intent. And the reason that people are so confused about this is because Russia is just usually so subtle. It's engaged in a few wars. It's been in Syria, it's had the war against Georgia, but it's never been so openly brazen. I guess you could say taking Crimea was a brazen attempt, but it wasn't a conflict. It was more of a very swift, underhanded tactic. It wasn't a square off of two armies. Most people didn't really know what was happening until it was too late, and the international community certainly couldn't do anything because by the time they were even aware of it, Crimea had fallen. So this is very different. This is an actual build-up of Russian forces threatening to come into Europe and declaring that they are willing to do it. And this is kind of behavior we've not seen for quite a long time from Russia. So you can see why this has got a lot of people confused and still not entirely sure what the kind of motive behind this is. Now, as I said in my last video, I suspect a lot of this is a test for Biden. He's the new US president, obviously, and he's not really laid out a plan for Russia yet. Now, there have been talks in the US about new sanctions. Biden was close, his son was certainly very close to Ukraine, so there's a bit more sympathy from their administration than there was from Trump's. But we still haven't seen anything definitive yet, so I still believe this could be a test of Putin to get the first hand in, to see if he can push Biden into doing something. But it's incredibly dangerous, because once you start escalating, others could escalate, and this could overspill, and I'm suddenly seeing there might be a chance of a spark to ignite the conflict into an even worse state of what it already is. And if you've been watching my channel, you know I believe it's already far too gone. But that's not to say that people haven't been talking. If you carry on looking, you see that Putin and Merkel have actually had a telephone call today and have actually agreed at launching a direct dialogue. So this is very important because Germany has actually been a pretty big player in these peace talks. If you've watched any of our videos before, you would know that we've explained the Steinmeier formula, which was actually formulated in Germany. And Germany has been one of the key players. They've also been part of the Normandy format, and they were at the most recent meeting in Paris along with Macron, Putin and Zelensky. And while that kind of seemed to go okay and there's a lot of grand promises, none of those things kind of got fulfilled. In fact, if we have a look at this Steinmeier formula, This is actually named for the president of Germany at the time. And at the time, it did get a lot of hate in Ukraine. It basically said that Ukraine would pull out of all the disputed territories, and it would create all these disengagements. So at the time, it wasn't very well received in Ukraine, and I can't agree, or I wouldn't even say that the disengagements have been incredibly successful. There haven't been as many as there should be. There were three in 2019, and from what I can tell, a lot of them have been violated, and troops are regularly seen in these areas. If you are interested in disengagement, in the last one which happened, we were actually present on the ground there, and I made this little video, so it's on our channel. Not doing very well with the views, but if you're interested in what the actual process of disengagement was, I would recommend checking out this video. It's pretty cool, and it was a really good first-hand experience to see how the two sides managed to disengage quite successfully. But as I say, it wasn't exactly long or fulfilled for long, because troops have actually been seen in this disengagement zone since. But moving back on to the build-up on recent times, actually, we had Zelensky visit the front line today, and that's a telling sign. It's always a bit worrying when the commander-in-chief comes to the front line to build up a bit of morale. But he was there. I think there's a second picture of him. And he's basically been visiting the sites which are incredibly close to the build-up, and visiting some of the soldiers where they've had some fallen soldiers this week. Because, and this is what I'm always saying, this war is continuing. Suddenly the world wants to turn its attention to it. Everyone's very interested again because there's a big build-up, but it's not like it had ever stopped. Sure, it wasn't at the level of what it had been or what it's threatening to go to now, but it's still been a constant state of warfare. There's still been people dying. There's still been civilians dying. So it's not like it ever went away. It's just growing more and more, well, threatening to grow more and more. And as a result, media's suddenly taken an interest in that, which I'm hoping can only really be good for Ukraine, because what they have missed out on is a lack of media attention, especially over the last few years. And in response to this, I saw this as it's been called in this article, nationwide military exercise, which is actually different to the build-up. That's what Russia are using as an excuse to the build-up, but they are also doing exercises across the entirety of Russia, which obviously probably is to coincide with the build-up, maybe a bit of an excuse for that. So Russia is doing these military exercises, and in response, you can see that Kyiv has asked for 4,000 conscripts to come for drilling near Crimea, which is pretty significant, because over the last few years, Ukraine has been trying to pull people from the front line. It's been pulling its heavy weapons back under its obligations to Normandy. It's been trying to pull its tanks back. And I'm not saying it's done it completely. I've been there, I've seen it on both sides where they haven't done that. But it has been trying to get the manpower out, and it has actually suffered as a result from manpower. So to suddenly have 4,000 conscripts going into training is pretty significant, and it shows that Kyiv is starting to take this threat a bit more seriously. However, unscheduled drilling near Crimea isn't 4,000 troops ready to be deployed in Donbass, so I'm hoping it's not a case of too little, too late. Now, for my own overview, even though it is a bit more worrying, I think a lot of this is just a comment, probably said a bit rashly, kind of blown out of proportion. I'm hoping I'm right in this, but I'm still not seeing a massive cause to worry, and I think it really is just a provocation, trying to play a bit of a gamble to see what the new US administration will do. I do hope I'm right, but I do think the chance of an escalation in this, or an escalation rising, has actually gone up a bit more. So I am a little bit more worried about Ukraine, but I'm hoping this will all just blow over in time. That would be my guess still, but we'll be waiting for an official NATO response, an official US response, which will be coming over the next few days, and we'll be able to see what happens from there. That's everything for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll be keeping my eyes on this over the next few days, so any updates, check here first. I will let you know what's happening. Until then, have a great weekend. Take care.